So last time we have created the Windows virtual machine, and I have explained you the importance of resource group, and also I have explained you when we are creating a virtual machine, what all different resources get created automatically, and we have also discussed on several other aspects. So today we are going to do the next, and then I'm also for your practical. I started preparing some sheet so that you guys can do the practical. So I can give you the steps, what practical you need to do and how. So I will, once that file is ready, I will share that with you so that you can do the practical as well. Now, if I'm creating this, say if I'm going to this resource group, which we have created last time, so we can see several different resources here. Now, last time we also have connected using RDP to this Windows machine. And now, today we are going to do dig down deeper and see what all things we can do further. Okay, and what is the meaning of it? So we will go step by step. So when we are creating virtual machines, since it is this is an infrastructure as a service, it is IaaS. So there are so many things which are associated with it. So right now we have created just the virtual machine, and we know that okay, how we can go into it, but we need to understand several aspects of it. So for example, when we are creating a virtual machine, say if I'm creating, so I'm going to do the virtual machine. And you can see that in virtual machine, we have discussed about the availability zones, right? And then we have discussed in detail about like the availability zone, like the availability sets, and we have discussed about so at least these two options, and then we discussed about the fault domain and update domain and all that. So all these things we discussed similarly. So each aspect is important, each thing is important, and then we also need to understand the options related with disk, the options related with networking, the options related with management, and like that. So this itself is a kind of use. So when we are creating disk, we need to understand the storage account. Okay, we need to understand when we are doing the networking, we need to understand the VNet completely. So there are, I mean, if we go deeper, we have a lot of things here to cover, a lot of topics, and this itself is a kind of, say if I'll cover say disk only, this itself is like multi-day session. Okay, so what I'm going to do is right now you understand that how easy it is to create a virtual machine and how we will be able to connect to the virtual machine if we are creating a Windows virtual machine. Okay, now the next point is I would like to take you to some of the theory part so that you will be able to understand the aspects of it. That okay, what is the meaning of each aspect? Okay, and then we will go step by step. Okay, but for your practical, because you also need to do some hands-on. So I'm creating a sheet for your practical, and I'm going to share that with you so that you will be able to make use of it, and you will be able to do the practical. At least you will be able to create the Windows virtual machine in case if you have not done earlier. But in case if you are confident enough that yes, you are fine to create the Windows virtual machine and you are able to connect, then it is fine. Then I don't have anything to do. Okay, so you just let me know that are you really very fresh or you have done some work. In case if you are really fresh, then perhaps I'll create that sheet and I'll share it with you. In case if you in case if you say that Girish, I'm good with this. Creating the virtual machine and connecting with it with RDP. then perhaps I'm not going to share it with you because that will save my effort. Okay. So let me know. So you can put it in the chat that if you need it. So just put it in the chat that you need it. Okay. And put it in the chat if you don't need it. So that I will be knowing how many of you. Okay. Just put need it or don't need it. Okay. Okay, fine. So I will create it. Okay, no problem. And maybe by Friday, definitely I will be able to share it with you. Okay, so don't worry. Now, here we are in, this. So first of all, before I fly again, I need to understand how many of you are confident and know about the resource group. If you are confident, just say yes. Okay. On the fault or update domain, just brief again. Okay, sure. I'll brief again for the fault domain and update domain. Okay. So, so resource group is clear to everyone, I hope. In case if not, let me know. You can speak up and I will then cover up. Otherwise, I'm going to jump on the fault domain and update domain. And then reason is also clear. Resource group, reason, and availability zone and availability set. Up till this, any confusion? Anything?
Technically, we read Girish, like I have read.
Sorry, what?
That is enough. Just the technical terms I know. Is that enough?
Technical terms, not enough. You need to know that when to use what is the meaning of it.
Okay, can you please explain?
Okay, so then I'm going to take you through the beginning. Okay, so first of all, let us talk about what do we mean by resource group, what do we mean by availability zone, what do we mean by availability sets, what do we mean by zone even, and everything else. Okay, so quickly. Okay, now 1 minute. So first of all, when we are creating an account in the Azure, we first need to do the creation of the account. The moment we create an account, it requires a subscription. If we are creating a single account, it do not need anything else other than a subscription. And you will feel like creation of an Azure account and creation of a subscription is one and the same thing. But actually it is not. Actually, these are the two different things. Creation of an Azure account is at the level of the management group. But creation of an Azure subscription sits at a lower end. So once we create an Azure account, then we have the subscription. In case, so within an Azure account, we can have multiple subscription. And then within each subscription, we are creating a resource group. So resource group comes, so I assume that you have the knowledge on the subscription and you have the knowledge on the Azure account creation and the management group. So I'm taking you through, the subscription. Okay. So sorry, from the resource group. So what is what is a resource group? In case if you are not sure what is Azure account and what is Azure subscription, I can even tell you that, but you need to tell me. Okay. So I'm starting from the Azure resource group. Okay. Basically a resource group is a kind of container that hold related resources for an Azure solution. So for example, if I'm creating a hierarchy, I can create it like this. So so for example, okay, suppose at the first of all, we are having here, say we have Azure account. Suppose this is your Azure account. Okay. Now this Azure account itself, or we can say this is a management group also. Okay. So we are having an Azure account here. Now, after this Azure account, at the next level, we have, say, subscription. So here we are having subscription. Somewhere down here. Subscription. Sorry, I'm not good with this, annotation, but I'm trying. Okay. So this is where we have our subscription. Not sure why it is not aligned properly. Maybe 1 minute. I'll use the text here. Okay, no problem, Ravi. You can have. Okay. Okay. So first of all, we are having the Azure account. Within that, then we have the Azure subscription. Under the, once you go inside the subscription, then you will have, say for example, here you have the Azure subscription. Okay. Here you have the Azure subscription. After you are going to this Azure subscription, then you are going to have, and these can be multiple subscriptions. So it's not essential that you will be having one. You can have multiple subscription. Okay. Then after that, you are having, say, multiple resource group. So you can have 1, 2, 3, n number of resource group. Okay. And what is the resource group? Say for example, you are having 2 resource group or 3 resource group like this. Okay. So now these are your RGs. Okay. That means the resource group. So these are your RG. So you can have like multiple resource group here. Okay. So like this, you can have multiple resource group. Each resource group can have multiple resources. Okay. Now these resources are having either a single location, a single this thing, but mainly you are, the resource group are working like a container. Okay. So these are like containers. Okay. And each container can have multiple resources. So a resource group is a container that hold related resources for an Azure solution, and all the resources within a resource group have a same life cycle. So which means that they get created. They are using the same location in your data center, and then they can have, they they get created together, they get stopped together, they get start together. So everything, whatever operation you are, performing on those resources, all the things happening together. So it's not like that, okay, you can, within a resource group, you have, say, 6 resources, and you can start them, start one resource and you can stop, another resource. That is not possible. So which means that all the resources, if are, in case if get started, they, all of them get started together. In case, so you can deploy, you can update, and you can delete them together. You can start them together. Okay, so that is how, we are saying that all the resources sharing the same life cycle. Also, they are having, the resource group are the fundamental element of the Azure platform. A resource group is a resource group can contain anything. For example, when I'm saying resources, that means it could be your, say, for example, Azure Application Gateway, your Azure Cosmos DB, your Azure Network, say VNet, say Azure Virtual Machine, say Azure Database. Okay, so whatever resources you are creating, all the resources will lie in a resource group. Okay, and then from that resource group, and many resources can be moved between the resource group. So in case if you have created the resource group initially, so it is not static that always you want, you want them in a single resource. You can, if you want, you can move the resource from one resource group to other resource group depending on its need. So you can move the resources, and that you can do when you stop your services. So after stopping your services, then you can move your resources. Okay, but resources can't be, and then the way we are having, like, the Azure account, then we are having the subscription, multiple subscription. Within that, say for example, we are having multiple, within a single subscription we can have multiple resource group. But within a single resource group we can have multiple resources, but you can't nest the resource group, resources further. So if you're creating one resource, that will remain same. So which means that the resources are at the leaf node. They are, they cannot be further divided. So at the top level, at the root node, the root node is your Azure account. Afterwards, the leaf node is your resource. So from that leaf node, afterwards, you will not be able to move further. Okay, so that, but yes, if you want, you can move your resources. That is not a problem. Okay, but you can't further divide it. Okay, that is one thing. Second thing is that all the resources within a resource group share the same life cycle. Okay, that I explained you, that you can deploy them together, you can update them together, you can delete them together. So in case if you have created, say, 10 resources within a resource group, and you wanted to delete, say, few of them, so instead of, either you can, in case if you just want to delete one, that you can do, but you can't delete, but in case if you want to delete, say, multiple, or if you wanted to stop, all the resources together, then you can do it together on a resource group level. Okay, and in case if you want to, say, completely vanish everything, then you can just simply go and delete the resource group. So the moment you will delete the resource group itself, all the resources within that will automatically get deleted. So you don't need to delete them separately. Okay, so that is where your resource group comes in the picture. See, it is just like that. You are creating, suppose you have a folder. In folder, suppose you have a 10 file. The moment you will delete the folder, all the files will go. Okay, so like that. So similarly, in case if you are having a folder, and if you are moving that folder from one place to another place, then all the files within that folder will also get moved. Right, it's not like that, okay, file will remain there and the folder only will get moved. So that will not happen. So similarly, this is a container, and within that container you are having several different resources. So how many resources you can and you can have, so you can deploy up to 800 instances of a resource type in each resource group. Okay, some resource types are exempt of that 800 instance list, but but except that exception, all the resources. So you can have 800 instances of a resource type into a resource group. So for example, if you're creating, say, VM, so you can have multiple VMs within a single resource group. It's not essential that if you're creating a VM and then you wanted to create another VM, or if you're creating a VNet and then you wanted to create another VM, you need to switch your resource group. You can have 800 instances of a resource type, for example, a VM. So you can have 800 VMs within that, within a resource group, or you can have VNet, or you can have, say, your DBs, right? So you can have multiple instances of a particular resource type in a resource group, and the limit is, say, 800 instances. So you can think of how big this container is. Okay, now so why does a resource group need a location? Because actually resource group need a location, and then the resources within it can fall into the same location, or it can fall into a different location as well. But although you can do it, for example, you are creating a resource group, say, in the US West, okay, and then you are creating the resources underneath, okay, and you don't want to put them in the US West. You wanted to choose a different location of it. You can do that, although that is not recommended. Why? Because if you are, the logically, when we are creating a resource group, the intention behind it that all the things within it are, having the same thing. So the same location, and like that. That way you will be able to easily manage your thing, and you yourself will remember it, that okay, all my resources falling in this are having this location, and then so it will be more manageable for you. But from Azure side, there is no constraint. So you can have a resource group, and then within that a resource, a resource can have a different location. That is not a problem. So the question is that why does a resource group need a location? Okay, so the resource group stores, and the rationale behind it is that the resource group store the metadata about the resources. So when you specify a location for the resource group, you are specifying where the metadata is getting stored. Okay? For compliance reasons, for example, you may need to ensure that your data is stored in a particular region. So you are saying that the moment you are creating a resource group, you are actually creating a metadata store. Okay, and that metadata store is sitting in a particular location, and that that metadata will be helping you for your compliance purpose. So except in the global resources like Azure, content delivery network, Azure DNS, Azure traffic manager, Azure front doors. Uh, these are some of the resources where if a resource group region is temporarily unavailable, you can't update resources in the resource group because the metadata is is not there. So in case if that reason will go off because of some reason, then those resources which are, whose metadata is, stored in that resource group, those resources will go down, and those resources you will not be able to access. So the, this is a kind of limitation. So the resources in the other region will still be able to function, but the resources which are falling in that particular region, right? But since their metadata is being stored in the, at the resource group level, so those resources will go down. Okay, so even if you are having the resources tagged to another location, but since their metadata is falling in that resource group, so I mean, that resource will go down. Okay. So, I mean, so the answer would be that the moment you are creating a resource group, you are ensuring that your metadata of all the resources which are falling in that resource group will lie at a certain location. For example, US West. Okay. And in case if the US West is going down because of one or other reason, then those resources which are having the metadata shared in that, all those resources will go down, even if their location is at a, I mean, their actual location is at a different place. For example, you have created a VM, and that VM location is say US East, but the VM exists in the resource group which is having the location of say US West. And in case if your US West will go down, even if your VM is having say US East location, still your VM will not be able to go up because its metadata is in a different, uh, resource group altogether. Okay, so and that's the reason why, because your resource group is keeping the metadata, so therefore it is able to control the life cycle of it. Therefore, you are able to update the resources, or you are able to delete the resources, or you are able to do whatever operation. Okay, all of them you can do together because it affects the metadata. Okay, now coming to the next. So after resource group, then we are having, and I explained you earlier about in the detail about the I think Azure Resource Manager, the management group. Yeah, we discussed about the subscription also in detail, but this is, but this thing I think I have not explained you the rationally behind the resource group. Okay, now next is, so the way we are having the resource group. Okay, so for resource group, there is another concept which is tagged to it, is known as Azure Resource Manager. So Azure Resource Manager have a control on the resources, resource group, resource provider, etc. Okay, and with the help of it, you can also, the Azure Resource Manager also allow you to create a template so that all the things will will be applied on that resource group, and you will be able to create a template, and you will be able to initialize those resources, or in case if you wanted to create a copy of those resources, you will be able to do them together. So how it is? So for example, you are in this resource group RG1. Okay, so now you have created all these resources. Now you want that sorry, some question. Sorry, Parvez, what you're telling me? But we have around 15 session on the basic. Yes, yes, yes. So we have we had already like more than 15 sessions on on the basic of Azure computing, and that's the reason why I have not covered those things, but I have covered the the specification on the Azure resource group. Okay, which I have not covered earlier. Okay, and now I'm going to tell you the thing which which you haven't heard in the fundamentals of it. Okay, so I'm not going to duplicate that. Whatever I have explained earlier, I'm not going to duplicate on that. So in case if anybody want, they can, they will be able to do that. They will be able to listen my previous sessions. So that is not a problem. Okay, so I'm not duplicating anything. So don't worry about that, Parvez. Okay, but your question is, if RG goes down, then resources will also go down, but this can't have backup to other data center. Okay, so the concept of the data center is something like this. So in case if you are creating multiple VMs, okay, or in case if you are creating a data center itself, for example, you are creating a DR site. So when you are creating a DR site, then you can have you can put your resources in that DR site and into a different resource group. Okay, so that is how. So for example, normally what happens is, say for example, you are creating your resources in the US East. Definitely, in case if you need a backup, you will not put your resources in the same US East, right? So for example, maybe you can say that, okay, I can keep 1 or 2 VMs in say US East, but my backup thing should be in some other part of it. So some other part of the world. So I may choose say US West, I can choose say some other location, maybe any other country I can choose, right? Because that, that option is always available to us. And then we can have a backup in that ways. So it depends on you how you are architecting your solution. It's not compulsory that you can, you can put all your resources in your one location. Okay, but the constraint of the resource group, what I explained you, will remain same. Okay, I have one more question. Yes, Sapna. So it will have one RG can have 800 instances of a resource. Okay, now, okay. Now, so suppose I'm here. Okay. Now in this, I have created these resources. Now, the moment you can see this is export to CSV. Okay. And you can also see manage view. You can also see delete resource group. Okay. So these are the things which are applicable for all these resources which are here. So assume that you are saying export to CSV, which means that you are exporting these resources data into a CSV. Okay. Now, in case suppose you wanted to say manage view, so you are having, this is particularly for this view only. But suppose if you are using say export to CSV, okay, what it does, it will create it, and it will be able to, I'll show it to you. So it will tell you all your resources and their location. Okay. So that ways you will be able to keep the record of it. Okay. Now, in case if you want a JSON view, for example, so you can create a JSON view. So this is your JSON view. Okay. And then, so you are having a resource group, and this is your JSON. So in case if you wanted to create a resource group similarly, you can use this JSON. Okay. Similarly, for example, you are having a resource manager also. So and you are also having a resource visualizer also. So if you are going to resource visualizer, you can see, so this is your VM, and this is your network interface, and this is your IP address, and this is your virtual network, and this is your network security group. So it tells you how your resources are constructed. Okay, so this can happen when you are into a particular RG. So from this RG, it is able to tell you that, okay, this is your resource architecture. Okay, so these are some of the things with which you you will be able to use your resource group. And of course, for your resource manager, you will be able to do that. Okay, now I'm coming to the resource manager. So as I said, that a resource manager can can have the resources. It can, it can help for the resource group also. It can also help for the resource provider. Okay, so for example, when I'm saying a resource provider, so right now we are all the resources we are using is from the Azure, but it's not essential that we are using the resources from Azure. We also have a marketplace, right? So from marketplace, in case if we are using any resource, so that company who is providing its resources in the marketplace, that company is your provider. Okay. So with the help of your resource manager, you are able to control those things. Okay. Now, how your resource manager is. So first I'm going to tell you the the theory part of it, and then we will go for the practical of it. Okay, so as I said that Azure portal, so you can create a resource from, using how many ways? I explained you earlier. Anybody can tell who attended the previous session? Anyone? Okay, so my question is, in case if you wanted to create a resource or a resource group, how many ways you are able to create it? Suppose you wanted to create a VM, okay, within a resource group. How many ways how many ways you have with which you will be able to create a resource? And type in search. Yes. Yes. Okay. So there are 4 ways of it. One is using portal. Second is using Azure CLI. Third is using PowerShell, not Power BI. Power BI is a different component altogether. This is for the BI, business intelligence. Okay. So Power BI is for business intelligence. It's not for this. So Azure CLI, Azure Portal, Azure PowerShell, and REST client. Okay. So these are the 4 ways how you will be able to create your resource. So when we are saying REST client, which means, for example, your JSON. Azure CLI, which is your bash. Azure PowerShell is your PowerShell interface. Okay. And the command and the control and everything is different in each cases. So there are 4 ways how you will be able to create it. But whenever you are creating, these type of thing, particularly for the Azure PowerShell and Azure CLI, if you are using it, you need to use the SDKs. So which means that in your system, software development kit should be installed, and you should be able to utilize that if you are using the PowerShell and CLI. Otherwise, you will not be able to do that. However, if you are having your Azure portal, just by using Azure portal, you will be able to interact with the Azure Resource Manager, and also from the REST client also. So if you're using REST client, you don't need the SDKs. But for Azure PowerShell and Azure CLI, you need SDK. Okay, and then once you have your Azure Resource Manager, within that, then you can put your resource group, and then you can control your data store or web app or virtual machine or whatever you wanted to have. Okay. Now, so with the help of Azure Resource Manager, you can use the management features like the control, logs, tags to secure and organize your resources after deployment. Okay. Azure Resource Manager make it easy for you to deploy, monitor, and manage resources in your app. So you no longer have to deploy parts of your app separately and then manually put them together. So how does the Azure Resource Manager help? It will help you to do all your operation, like the deploy, like the monitor and the manage resources in your app, so that no longer, you no longer have to deploy parts of your app separately. So everything, all your operations, whatever you are doing, it will go together, not in the parts. And you don't need to do things manually. So for example, you are launching a particular, say, VM. So the moment you are launching VM, all the things which are associated with it, say VNet, the 6, 7 things which we discussed, right? All those things will go together with it. So you don't need to do them separately. For example, here I am, and now I am going to this VM. Okay. Now in this VM, so I'm in this VM. So the moment I will click on the start, all the resources which we have seen in the RG1, say VM. So with this Girish VM Win, Girish VM IP, NSG, this is your network interface, this is your disk, this is your data disk, this is your OS disk, and this is your virtual network. So all these things, you don't need to separately start it. You just need to go and click on it, and which is the parent. And how you will be able to understand the parent? So the moment you are going to see that structure which I have shown you in your RG1, right? So all those things together. So all these 6, 7 component. The moment you will click on the parent, which is your VM, and you will start it. Everything together will get started. You don't need to do it separately. And how it is happening? Because at the back end, you are having an Azure Resource Manager, which is helping you to do these things. And from that Azure Resource Manager, right, you are having the monitoring, you are having the capability aspects, you are having your these things. So all those things, like the properties, like the monitoring stuff, all those things, you are able to do with the help of your Azure Resource Manager, which is working in the backend. So the moment you are starting this, the moment you will click on the start, everything go together, and everything will get started together. Okay. Now, in case if you wanted to do, for example, so we will discuss on the uh, other aspect, like the resource manager, sorry, the templates and all those things later. But first of all, we are just understanding. After fundamental, we are understanding the next step of it. So the moment if I'm starting this, so I clicked on the start, and it is starting. So meanwhile, starting virtual machine, you can see it here. So once this machine will get started, you will be able to access everything, and you don't need to do it separately. Okay, that is what I wanted to explain. Okay, next is, so what are the benefits of the Azure Resource Manager? You can deploy, manage, and monitor all the resources of your solution together as a group. Okay, so that is your first thing. So you can manage everything together. not a good tool. Let me share. Let me know in case if you wanted, I mean, you can see this. Yes, okay. So first thing is that you can deploy, manage, and monitor all the resources for your solution together as a group. Okay. Second is that you can Second is that you can repeatedly deploy your solution throughout the development lifecycle, okay, in a consistent way. So in case if you want, you can, you can deploy them. So repeatedly deploy your solution throughout the development lifecycle, okay, in a consistent way. Third is that you can manage your infrastructure through declarative templates, and these templates we will discuss when we will be when we will discuss the RAM. Okay, so you can manage your infrastructure through declarative templates. So you can create a template, and with that, and you can use those templates with the help of your script. So although we will not see how we will be able to do with the script, but we will definitely be able to see that how we will be able to create the templates. Okay, next is we will be able to define the dependencies between resources so that so they are deployed in the correct order. Okay, so in case if we have several dependencies, we will be able to define the dependencies between resources. So your resource 1 should go up first, and then your resource group 2 should come. So in case if you have these type of dependencies, you will be able to define them also. Okay, similarly, you will also be able to apply access control. So you will be able to apply access control to all the services. Okay, apply access control to all the services in your resource group, because you have your RBAC, and this RBAC we have already discussed during our fundamentals. Okay, similarly, you can also do your apply. You can apply tags to your resources, okay, the way you want. And what is the importance of tag? We discussed it earlier, right? So when we are using tags, and anybody can explain, what is the RBAC services means? So first, can anyone recall when we can use the tags? What is the purpose of the tag? Okay, so the purpose of the tag is to do the billing. Okay, so your organization billing. So when you will have a bill, with the help of tag, you will be able to understand that where my cost is going. Okay, so tags will be are helpful for your cost. For you to know that your cost is associated with this tag. For example, if you are creating a VM and the set of resources for say development purpose, so you can create a tag of say dev. Okay, and that dev, yes, each tag have the value and pair. Value pair. So which means that you need to have define a key and its value. So for example, you can say department is your key, and then the value will be say development. Then your key is say department, and then value is say for testing. Say your development, I mean say your department, and then the production. Okay, so likewise you will be able to define your key value pairs, and with the help of key value pair you will be able to name, yeah, correct. So I mean with the help of that you will be able to do that. And when we are saying key value pair, so this is a kind of dictionary form. So where, the moment you will put it in the JSON, you will be able to understand that every JSON has one key and one value. So similarly, when you are doing the tag, you will be able to have your name of the tag and your your value. Okay, so these are some of the purposes how you will be able to use your resource manager, and you will not be able to use your resource manager in case if you are not using the resource group, in case, and if you're not using your resource group properly, so you will not be able to have much benefit of it. Okay, so therefore it is important for you to think and define your resources in a systematic way, so that all resources falling under a resource group should be, should have a particular aim. And with that aim, you should be having your location information, your, why you are creating that resource group. So you should be having a particular purpose, and based on that purpose, and you can define a resource group. And if you're defining it logically, then it will make your life simple. Okay, so now we are coming to availability zones. Okay, now in the availability zone, I have explained you even in the last two meetings. So who would like to explain the availability zone quickly? The difference between availability zone and availability sets. Who would like to tell? Okay. So what is So what is difference between between availability zone and availability set? And what is availability zone? Anybody?
Availability zone is deploying your resources in different data center, but in same region for fault tolerance. That's the availability zone. And availability set, I can't remember that. Sorry.
Okay. Anybody else?
Availability sets are when you have on the same server, you have the virtual machines, right? So that is the availability sets. And when you have two different locations, then it is two different availability zones. They may or may not be in the same region.
Something not. Okay.
It's somewhat like this only, I guess.
Yep. Okay.
As far as I remember, means like it was like some time that I exams.
Yeah. No, I understand. Yeah. So, okay. So I'm asking to the people, those who have attended, the previous session. Okay. So, yes, anybody? Somebody was speaking. Okay. So, Azure availability zone. You want to ensure your services and data are redundant, right? So to protect your information, in case of failure, that's the rationale behind Azure Availability Zone or Azure Availability Set. When you host your infrastructure, setting up your own redundancy, then you are or you're duplicating your hardware environment. You, I mean, in case if you need to do that just to make it redundant, and that's the basic redundancy. It's not like the ultimate redundancy. The basic redundancy is that in case if you are using the Azure Availability Zone, you will be able to have your, I mean, you will be able to create redundant, resources, so that you will be able to duplicate your, things. And in case if one goes down, in case if one data center will go down, you will have another data center in place. Okay, so particularly availability zone, in case of availability zone, suppose you have one data center and then you are having another data center. So for example, you are having one data center here. So you are having one data center here, say for example, in the and all of them are in same region, and then you are having say another data center here, and you wanted to create a kind of hardware this thing duplicacy, so that you will have, you will be able to clone your this thing and quickly, and the distance between so this is a kind of high speed network, and it takes only 2 millisecond period of time to duplicate your this thing from one data center to other data center. So in case, because of your electricity failure or something else, right, in case if this data center goes down, then you still have another data center for you. Okay, that's where your Azure availability zones are coming into the picture. And how many maximum availability zones you can have? Up to 3. Okay, so you can have 2 copies, you can have 3 copies maximum. And the advantage of availability zone is that it will provide you the SLA of say 99.99%. However, in case of your availability sets, your SLA will go down. Yes, and it will be 99.95% instead of 99%. Okay, so in this case, your Azure availability zones are providing more tolerance. It will provide the more redundancies and accuracy. But in case if you are going with say Azure availability sets, it will be little lesser. But some of the so in some of the reason, you will not be able to find the availability zones at all. Okay, you can only find the availability sets. So there you need to use your Azure availability sets, because you don't have the Azure availability zones altogether. Okay, otherwise in some of the locations, say for example you are using US East, US West, or Asia, or Australia, or like that, you will be able to see that you have both the options. Either you can go for the Azure availability set, or Azure availability zone. When you are going with the Azure availability set, of course, your the differentiating factor, in case if you have both, then the differentiating factor is your cost. But in case if you don't have the Azure availability zone, then the only option lies with you is the Azure availability set. Now, what is the Azure availability set? So availability set is a logical grouping of VM that allow Azure to understand how your application is built to provide the redundancy and availability. Again, the same thing, but first of all, that in case of availability set, your SLA, which Azure commit, is lesser than your Azure availability set. Second is, in case of Azure availability set, you are having a concept of your fault domain and update domain. So what is your fault domain? So assume that you are having say 3 fault domain and 20 update domains. Now in this, say your fault domain 0, fault domain 1, fault domain 2. Now in that, each fault domain particularly, okay, each fault domain is having your each fault domain represent an isolated collection of your server your network and storage resources. Okay, so when you are having your availability, fault domain, you are having your server, your network and storage, everything within that fault domain. Okay, and only VMs with with managed disk can be created in a managed availability set. The number of managed disk fault domain varies by region, but all your managed disk will lie in the same, which is in that availability set, which that will lie in that particular fault domain. Okay, and so your each virtual machine in your availability set is assigned an update domain and a fault domain both by underlying Azure platform. Each availability set can be configured with up to 3 fault domain and 20 update domain. An update domain indicates the group of the virtual machines and underlying physical hardware that can be rebooted at the same time. So all your machines will get rebooted in case if you're having your update domain. Okay, when more than 5 virtual machines are configured within a single availability set, then your 6th virtual machine is placed into the same update domain. So you are having, say, your 20 update domain, right? So it will go like this. So for example, you are having your first virtual machine, second virtual machine, third virtual machine, and so on up till 5. So when more than 5 virtual machines are configured within a single within a single availability set with 5 update domains, right? The 6th machine is placed into the same update domain as the first one. So which means that in case your in case your update domain will go down, so then your first and 6th machine will go down, and like that. So your second and maybe 7th machine. So the grouping will happen like this. So your first machine with your 6th machine are falling in the same, in the same update domain. And update domain, and each update domain is having the different power supply. Each update domain is having its own network. Each update domain is having its own system. So that ways, in case if the update domain and then update domains are rebooted. For example, in case if you're rebooting your first virtual machine, if you want to reboot it, obviously your 6th machine, virtual machine will also get rebooted. So you need to be having this thing clarity in your mind, that because update domains are having a physical constraint, and in case if your machine is, if your entity is tied with your with your machine. So in case your virtual machine is, if you wanted to go take it down, then entire your physical hardware will go down. Okay, but that is not happening in case of the machine which are falling in the different update domain. So it is like this. So for example, this is your fault domain 1. This is your fault domain 2. This is your fault domain 3. Now, within this, you will be having one update domain. This is your second update domain. This is your third update domain. This is your fourth update domain, like this. Similarly, you are having the update domain here also. So you can think it as a rack. Okay. So you are having these different update domain. So this is your fault domain F1, for example. This is your fault domain 1, this is your fault domain 2, this is your fault domain 3. And in this, each of these fault domain, you will be having several fault domain. And then you are having your machine here. So for example, your machine is here. Okay. So next machine, so one machine is here. Another machine may be here. Machine may be here. So like that, multiple machines lies in these domains. So like, okay, let me just indicate it like this. So another machine may be like, maybe in this. Okay. Second machine may be like in this. Okay. So like this. So you will be having multiple machines in each of your these fault domain and update domains. Okay. And that's how you actually work. So in case if your update domain will go down, then all the machines which are within that update domain will also go down. So you are having, say, in this update domain, you are having machine here, machine here, machine here. So everything will go down. Is there in restriction on number of update domain that can be pasted under one fault domain? Sorry, what? Can be passed under one update domain. Okay. So basically, your it will always be, let's say, equal. Okay. So for example, you are having the three fault domain, and then you are having, say, the distribution of the update domain within that fault domain, and the each availability set can have 3 fault domain and 20 update domains. Okay, so which means that maybe 776, something like this, but I don't remember in case if you have any constraint particularly with the fault domain and update domain. Okay. Maybe I can check in case of, yeah. So we all need to drop. I think we have just 2 minutes. Okay. So this is the concept of update domain and fault domain. So today we discussed about, we discussed about the update domain and fault domain in brief. We discussed about Azure Resource Manager. We discussed about Azure resources. The resource group and the importance of it. And we discussed about that. Okay, in case if we want, we can the life cycle related constraint. We discussed about that. Okay, in case if we want, we can have a template out of it for entire set. So all the resources which is falling under a resource group, we can create a template out of it, and then we will be able to use it through our script. We also discussed that different ways to create a resource group. Sorry, 4 different ways to create any resource. Either it is a resource group or your resources. Okay. Anything else in case if you have any question quickly? Okay then. So I think we are winding up today. Okay, thank you so much.